guys, this video is going to be my VBAC story. I've had 2 VBACs so far, and this is going to be my very first VBAC. I went ahead and wrote down all of the big points because it is still fresh on my mind, but I went ahead and made a list of things when they happened so I didn't have to think of them on the spot. So I'll be reading the stuff that I wrote down on my phone. It was only 2 years ago, so I pretty much remember everything and times and stuff like that, and it was my first VBAC, and that's really special to me. So whereas Daniel, he was my first baby, so that's pretty special, and then my second was almost just as special because it was my first VBAC. So I'm going to quit rambling and I'm just going to get right into it. On October 10th in the evening, 2 days before he was born, I thought that I was leaking, so I went to the hospital and had them check to see if I was leaking or not, and I was not leaking. They stripped my membrane and they told me to go home and baby dance. So that is what we did. October 11th, I woke up around 8 o'clock in the morning and I got up to go pee, and just like with Daniel, I stood up and my water busted all over the place. It was a huge mess. Around 9 a.m. we ate breakfast. I was trying to wait around a little bit. I knew for sure that it was my water because, like I said, it burst all over the place. So I wanted to stay at home until my contractions got stronger and closer together because I wasn't really having any at that point. So we ate breakfast, and then shortly after breakfast I started feeling the contractions. So at about 10 o'clock in the morning, me and my husband and my sister headed to the hospital, and then I was in triage for what seemed like forever, but it was only like an hour or two, and they were just, because they had to wait for a room to be opened up. So I walked the halls outside of triage and was just trying to keep my contractions going consistently, because I noticed once I would lay down in bed they would kind of taper off, so I tried to stay up moving around as much as they would let me. Around noonish I got into a room, and at that point they hooked up the wireless monitor and I got to walk the halls, and they brought in one of those peanut balls and a regular birthing ball and just let me do my thing. I did like the fact that they had the wireless monitors. That was really awesome. At around 3 in the afternoon, I ate a sandwich just to keep my energy level up, and after I was done eating, I needed to go potty, so I waited for that next contraction to pass, and then I got up and I went to go potty, and I sat down and I peed, and I got stuck in what seemed like a 10-minute long contraction. I was stuck on the toilet. I was screaming that this is it, this baby's coming. I had never had a contraction, and I still have never had a contraction that lasted as long as that one did. After I did make it out of the bathroom and back into the bed, I had them come check me, and I was at a 4. So I arrived at the hospital at a 3, and the fact that it was several hours later, I just had a major contraction that lasted forever, and I was only at a 4, and that really scared me. So I went ahead and got the epidural. Around 5-ish, I wasn't progressing as much as they had wanted to, so the midwife came in, and she wasn't like my midwife. She was the midwife on call, and honestly, I didn't really care for her too much, but she suggested that we start Pitocin because I was only at a 4 to 5, so I wasn't quite a 5, but I wasn't a 4 anymore, and it had been several hours. So she wanted to go ahead and start me on Pitocin, which if you haven't watched Daniel's birth story, go check that out. But in that birth story, they cranked it up pretty high from the jump. And so Pitocin made me really, really nervous. I got really upset with that, and she said that she would give me a minute to think about it. And my nurse, I loved my nurse. she was like, you know, you don't have to take the Pitocin if you don't want to, because I had told her what happened with Daniel's birth, and she was like, well, we don't do it like that here. She assured me that at that hospital that's not how they did things. They start it really low as it can go, and then they bump it up slowly if needed. So I was like, okay, let's go ahead and try it. They hooked me up to Pitocin. They started it at a 2, which I believe is the lowest. I think it goes 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10. And so they started it at a 2, and they were going to check me after an hour to see if I had made any progress. So they were going to bump it up after an hour if there was no change. So around 6 o'clock, they did go about 2 hours because I was just really nervous about bumping it up. So at 6 o'clock, I was checked, and I was progressing, but not very fast. And keep in mind, my water had broke around 8 o'clock in the morning, and this was now like 6 o'clock at night, and I was only like at a 5. So they bumped it up to a 4 and told us to get some rest, which also with Daniel, his heart rate kept dropping really low, and so I would just, you know, my husband and my sister wanted to get some sleep, so I took my sister's flip-flop and I would just hit the mouse on the computer to turn the screen back on so that I could watch his heart rate. And I did that all night long. I did not sleep at all. On October 12th, my midwife finally arrived at 7 o'clock in the morning, and I love her. At 8:30-ish, she said that I was pretty much a 10, but I had a lip, and so they wanted him to come down even more. So she said that she had to chart it as a 9, but I was pretty much a 10. There was just a little bit of a lip there. And so they were just going to let him come down a little bit more. And then at 9 o'clock, she came in and checked me, and that was gone. I was 10 centimeters ready to go. So they set up a mirror for me because I was really wanting to watch it myself. So they set up a mirror for me, which I loved. That was pretty awesome to be able to see him come out like that. And I pushed for 41 minutes, and at 9:41, Caden Patrick made his appearance. I had tore pretty bad. Most people tear backwards, but I tore forwards. And so that made it a really tricky thing to sew up, I guess. So they called in an OB because midwives don't practice that kind of stuff. So they called an OB in, and she gave me 2 stitches, and then yeah, but I think I had already started breastfeeding at that point because they put them right up on my chest, and I rubbed all the nasty stuff off of them, and we started breastfeeding. And then whenever they got everything cleaned up, Daniel came in to meet his brother. Also, we did delay cord clamping, and then we also delayed his first bath until after 24 hours old. And when my mom brought Daniel in to see us, we found out that her and Daniel actually slept at the security desk. My mom, she was rooting for me to have the VBAC and for it to be successful, but it scared the crap out of her because there are certain risks with VBACs. But I had to do a VBAC consult to make sure that that is what I wanted whenever I was pregnant, and you'd be surprised. And from what I heard, the paperwork that they gave me to go over, how they explained it to me, is that a VBAC is way less risky than a repeat cesarean if you're going to have more kids, because it's just going right back into that scarred tissue, which isn't really good. As far as recovery goes, because of the 2 stitches, it was pretty painful. At around 4 weeks, I did have to go to my midwife and have them cut the knots off of the stitches because that was just really painful because of where they were at. But I would say that it was completely healed around 6 weeks. So it was much better than having the C-section, obviously. But it was still pretty painful. as far as baby blues, postpartum depression, all that kind of stuff. I didn't hit on this with Daniel's story, so I will go ahead and say that with Daniel, I did have pretty bad separation anxiety. I didn't want people holding him or touching him or breathing on him. I just wanted him to myself. I needed him on me constantly. I did not want him out of my sight or in somebody else's arms. It was really weird. But with this time, I had separation anxiety, and I was really sad out of my normal sadness, and it lasted for about 4 months. So I did have separation anxiety with Daniel, and I did have postpartum depression with Cade. That is all of my labor and delivery story for my first VBAC. I will be doing Landon's VBAC, which, a little spoiler, it went way better. Easiest birth ever. Go ahead and like this video if you did. If you have any questions, leave them down in the comment section below. Subscribe to our channel if you haven't already so you don't miss anything, and we will see you in the next one. Thanks for watching. Bye!